I want to start tonight with this. Do you hear that? That is the rare and blissful sound of silence. We rarely get that these days because for the first time in his presidency, Donald Trump has not made a public appearance for 3 straight days. We're not sure why. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he's feeling a little low energy. Who knows? But for whatever reason, the president is taking his longest break from the public eye since retaking the White House. Now, if you were missing all of those nonsensical updates from the administration, because sometimes they're interesting to talk about, don't worry, because the president has surrounded himself with what he calls the best people, also his words, not mine, who are out there filling the void. People like former WWE wrestling executive Linda McMahon, who Trump inexplicably put in charge of the Department of Education. It's quite an assignment for her. Secretary McMahon, of course, testified before the Senate today, and Republican senators kind of did their level best to lob her softball questions and make it look like she kind of knows what she's doing. I mean, here was Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin trying to tee her up for an easy one.
What was we ranked in reading and math in 1979?
I'm sorry, what?
What was we ranked nationally in math and reading in 1979?
We were very, very low on the totem pole.
We were number 1 in 1979.
We were very, very low on the totem pole. Actually, we were number 1. Very awkward. That's the Secretary of Education, everyone. Now, in her limited defense, Senator Mullin's question was garbled nonsense. I mean, set aside the strange verb conjugation about what we was, which ranked, which, by the way, maybe that's confirmation that our education system needs help. He asked her how the U.S. ranked nationally when he clearly meant globally. So clearly neither of these people are getting an A in reading comprehension or, frankly, grammar today. What about math?
We spend $1.858 billion a year on TRIO.
Yes.
That's $1,580 million a year. Is my math right?
I think that's right, sir.
And how long have we been spending $1,580 million a year on this program? More than 10 years?
Yes.
So that's over $1 trillion.
Okay. I understand that we was not ranked number 1 in math recently either, but something there seems off, right? Don't have to be a mathematician. Maybe there's a Democrat on this committee who can help them out a little bit.
Madam Secretary, and I'm not a great mathematician, but I think you were talking about $1 trillion. I believe 1.5 billion times 10 is $15 billion. That's a little bit off from $1 trillion. But
I think the budget cuts $1.2 billion for TRIO.
Well, 1.2, that would be $12 billion, not $1 trillion.
Okay.
Okay. Thank goodness for Senator Jack Reed. Now, Republican senators and Trump's education secretary just spectacularly failed a math and a reading quiz of their own making while they were complaining about America falling behind in math and reading. But unfortunately, Linda McMahon is not the only one of Trump's best people who does not seem up to the job these days. I mean, here's the headline from the New York Times today. Acting FEMA chief told staff he didn't know about U.S. hurricane season. And here's more of what the story actually says. The acting head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency told employees on Monday that he did not know the United States has a hurricane season. Now, the Trump administration has said those comments were meant as a joke, but that was definitely not clear to people in the room. FEMA is now heading into a new hurricane season with a staff that has been absolutely gutted thanks to Trump's cuts. And FEMA staff are reportedly also worried about the new director's lack of experience. I wonder why there. Maybe the new FEMA director should have Googled his job first to see what it entails. After all, that is what Trump's equally unqualified Social Security commissioner actually did and then talked about.
We get a phone call and it's about Social Security. And I'm really not, I swear I'm not looking for a job. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So I'm Googling Social Security, you know, one of my great skills. I'm one of the great Googlers on the East Coast. I'm like, what the heck's the commissioner of Social Security?
What the heck's the commissioner of Social Security? Well, sir, That's you. You are the commissioner of Social Security. Now, to be fair, every member of Trump's cabinet seems to be kind of struggling to do their job these days. And honestly, a little Googling might serve some of them well. Could be worse. Googling might help them. I mean, take, for instance, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Last week, we talked about how his much anticipated and much celebrated at the time by MAHA people, MAHA report on American health was riddled with citation errors and at least 7 studies that didn't even exist. Well, Secretary Kennedy and his crack team took a crack at it again. They updated that report to fix those errors, which led to a new headline the next day. Here it is. The MAHA report has been updated with fresh errors. Yes, HHS swapped out the bogus studies in their first report with several new bogus studies. The actual authors of those new studies say HHS is still getting it wrong and is misrepresenting their work. So RFK Jr. has now somehow managed to screw up the same report twice. Okay, so things aren't going great at FEMA or Social Security, HHS, but surely the Department of Homeland Security is running like a swish swatch, right? Well, last week, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem sent out a press release claiming that ICE had arrested a, quote, illegal alien who threatened to assassinate President Donald J. Trump. It included an image of a handwritten letter, a threat letter that you can see on the screen there, that was sent to the president. Noem claimed that letter was sent by an undocumented immigrant in Milwaukee named Raymond Reyes. But it turns out local law enforcement officials did not think Ramon Reyes sent that letter. In fact, they think that Reyes was being set up. This is from a New York Times story that dropped late today. Quote, not long after the announcement, the government story began to look shaky. And as detectives in Wisconsin began looking deeper, they came to believe Reyes had been framed. By this week, Milwaukee County prosecutors had filed identity theft and witness intimidation charges against another man, a lifelong Wisconsin resident. They said that man had written several threatening letters that included Mr. Reyes' name in the return address. Prosecutors said it was an attempt to catch the attention of the Trump administration and weaponize the threat of deportation against Mr. Reyes, who is scheduled to testify against the man at a robbery trial next month. So this guy, who is actually on trial for a crime, basically tried to trick the Trump administration into deporting the witness who would testify against him. That's what happened. And the Department of Homeland Security appears to have fallen for it. They did exactly what he wanted. I don't know. Maybe Kristi Noem would be better off solving crimes if she was dressing up like Sherlock Holmes. She loves to dress up. Couldn't hurt. Maybe she could try it. Meanwhile, Trump's intelligence chief appears to be struggling with her job as well. As Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard is responsible for making sure that Donald Trump is up to date on the latest intelligence, which includes, of course, reading his presidential daily briefing, digesting all of it. But apparently that is proving very difficult. Since taking office, Trump has taken his daily intelligence briefing less than once a week, which is far less than previous presidents, including Trump himself, during his first term. And so Tulsi Gabbard is now resorting to what I would call creative methods. According to NBC News, one idea that's been discussed is possibly creating a video version of the PDB that's made to look and feel like a Fox News broadcast. A new PDB could include not only graphics and pictures, but also maps and animated representations of exploding bombs, similar to a video game. That is NBC's reporting. In other words, because Tulsi Gabbard is bad at her job and the President of the United States doesn't like to read, career intelligence staffers may be forced to put on some kind of Fox News puppet show in order to get the president to pay attention to intelligence threats against the United States and otherwise. Just digest that for a moment. And that is really part of the problem with all this. We all know when it comes to people, Trump is not sending his best. But at least the career public servants who have been the heart and soul of every administration, Democratic and Republican, should still be able to do their jobs, right? There's a whole system of dedicated federal workers who actually make the government function and in turn make even the most incompetent look vaguely competent. But Trump is making it impossible for them to do their jobs, too. I mean, the Washington Post recently dug into it, all the ways Trump's efforts to increase government efficiency have, ironically, buried federal workers under red tape. Here's part of what the story says, quote, At NASA, employees recently wrote several detailed paragraphs across multiple rounds of emails to win approval to buy simple fastening bolts. Fastening bolts, folks, required multiple paragraphs of emails. At the Food and Drug Administration, once routine tests on food, monitoring for accuracy in labeling, coloring, and exposure to heavy metals, were delayed significantly because the agency began requiring department-level approval for expenses at every step. Purchasing samples to test, paying to ship samples between labs, buying lab supplies. What could go wrong there? It's only the Food and Drug Administration. At air traffic control towers at 24 West Coast airports, officials are unable to easily pay to have the windows washed and shades cleaned, which is obviously important. At the Social Security Administration, Trump officials and DOJ pushed thousands of central office workers to take lower-level positions answering phones in field offices, threatening to fire whoever did not make the jump, according to emails reviewed by the Post and interviews with a half a dozen agency employees. So government officials cannot purchase bolts for rockets, do food safety testing, or wash the windows at air traffic control towers without wading through layers and layers of new Trump-approved red tape. Workers at Social Security are being forcibly demoted to call center workers because of Trump's workforce cuts. All of the real people who make our government run and have made governments run for decades are being squeezed. And all we're left with is the bizarre and clueless leadership of Trump's so-called very best people.